I've talked about tournament packs, reprint sets, structure decks, hell, I've even talked about the Yu-Gi-Oh game before Yu-Gi-Oh! But I've never talked about the video game promos. Okay, perhaps that's not entirely true, much like a cup of coffee with creamer isn't just a glass of milk. I have discussed the early video game promos in regards to the mystery of when they were actually released, a video I recommend you to check out after you finish watching this, because you will finish this video similar to how I will finish Dinosaurs on Disney+. I'm the Janjo, gotta love me. When it comes to releases in the Monopoly Guy Rich history of a children's card game,
Do not pass go! Do not collect $200!
no releases can be understated like the video game promos. The concept is simple. Buy a Yu-Gi-Oh video game that comes with cards that you can subsequently play with your friends whose pockets weren't lined with that sweet Monopoly money and beat them down with Flame Champion equipped with Salamandra. Because aside from when the 2002 promos were released, many of the Duel Monsters era video game promo cards actually had an impact to the metagame, like a Nibiru dropping onto the field. I swear I'm not salty, but don't blame me if I start to run anti-Nibiru Exodia Necros Turbo. Within the first month of TCG Yu-Gi-Oh!, America was already primed and ready to receive the first video game in that region. Dark Duel Stories was released on March 19, 2002 on the Game Boy Color, which was 10 days before the release of the starter decks. This was an early time in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which was great for releasing a game with varied rules so new players would surely be confused. However, that's a story for another video. Maybe. When DDS was first released, it included 3 promo cards that fit the current dueling environment: Blue Eyes White Dragon, Dark Magician, and Exodia, the Forbidden One. All 3 cards were available in the only available set, Legend of Blue Eyes, but this time in beautiful, prismatic secret rarity, a standard for all future promos, and in Blue Eyes and Magician's case, in alternate art before we would famously see them on the front of the aforementioned starter decks. In pre-format era Yu-Gi-Oh!, stall decks were a top-tier deck, at least in retrospect, making Exodia the only meta-worthy card upon release. There would be a second set of promo cards a couple months later for DDS that included Sayaryu, Acid Trap Hole, and Salamandra. The release date of these is a bit foggy, something I've touched upon already. However, the focus is on the cards themselves. Sayaryu is a pink dragon with not much going for it other than its looks. Salamandra at the time gave a nice 700 attack boost compared to all the weaker equips at the time. Downside being it was for fire monsters, which by this point, hovering around the release of Metal Raiders, had no solid targets. Lastly, we got Acid Trap Hole, which targeted high defense monsters. The only time it would see meta play would be in side decks in 2014. Acid would have been great in LOB Yu-Gi-Oh! If only it was a few months earlier by release, which it was not. Don't let misinformed Yugi-tubers fool you. Yugi Kaiba format most certainly did not include these promos and the rest of the 2002 promos I'm about to tackle. The Janjo Zone is your best place for true historic Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. It only took 2 more days since the release of DDS for the first North American Yu-Gi-Oh! Console game, Forbidden Memories, another Yu-Gi-Oh! Game where the rules are made up and the points don't matter. This PlayStation exclusive actually didn't include cards upon release. The promos would have to wait until the November 25th bundle that came with. Before we get to those cards, there was one more Yu-Gi-Oh! Game released in 2002, and that was on October 15th on the Game Boy Advance this time, with one of my faves, Eternal Duelist Soul. This game had a normal card system, thank fucking god, and included the following promo cards: Exchange, Graceful Dice, and Skull Dice. A card that swaps a card from the duelist's hands, and 2 cards that changes attack based on a die roll. It should have been called Skull Die since you use 1 die. Oh, my bad, it should actually be Skull V. The cards were clearly a gamble that didn't pay off like the KFC Double Down, which can only be described as
An idiot sandwich.
It should be noted that Exchange did see some experimental play at one point to counter hand traps. Going back to the Forbidden Memories promos, what was bundled was Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon, HARPIE's Pet Dragon, and fittingly Metal Morph. Pet Dragon is a fun card, but does nothing inherently if not to give the HARPIE deck a boss monster, so choose you to play it. At least if it was 1 tribute, it would have been better, but having 2 tributes for a starting attack attack at 2k just makes it garbage variety Dark Magician Girl. It wouldn't be until the release of HARPIE Channeler in the XZ's era where Dragon would see play. Metamorph is a kind of a decent card, if not for it being released a bit later than the formats it would have been thriving in, much like Acid Trap Hole. A trap card that provided a decent attack boost would have made Yugi Kaiba format a radically different one. Alas, it was not meant to be. From there, we have Red Eye's Metal, which can only be summoned from the deck, not from your hand, by tributing a Red Eye's Black Dragon while equipped with Metamorph. This is a rare instance of a monster being able to use its effect to summon while in the deck. But with all the resources you use to get it out, plus it needing to be in the deck so you can't draw into it, otherwise it's useless, plus it has fewer benefits of a Red Eyes with Metamorph, only having 100 extra attack and that's it, makes this mineral monster less suggestible than Cheetos Sushi. I suppose you could always pawn it off with exchange. Now, I've read on Wikipedia that in the instruction manual, it can be seen a Magician of Black Chaos card with a set number DDS000, which is interesting because not only did it take 5 more years for this card to come to the TCG, rituals weren't even a concept by Dark Duel Stories' first or second release. So why was this card featured in FMR's manual? My guess is that the developers probably wanted to highlight the monster since it was on the cover, so they slapped on a video game promo ID that they previously knew was available and used that. Clearly, this is just an image placeholder and not one of the promos, but it makes you think, what if this was bundled with the November FMR promos? In the OCG, this card was given to attendance to a tournament that was named after the prequel game to DDS, which sort of ties it all together. I mentioned Wikipedia specifically because I looked at a PDF of the manual and I could not make out the set number myself. Maybe you can, or if anyone can find a perfectly clear version of this, send it my way. Either way, the TCG really should have had received this card earlier than 2007, but I digress. Moving into 2003, the first video game jumps from the PS1 to the PS2 with Duelists of the Roses, since clearly real-world history needed more cardboard injected into it. There's just something inherently hilarious about Yugi playing the role of one Henry VII of England. You'd think they'd have adapted some Egyptian story, or shit, I'd even take Yugi dueling it out with Adolf Hitler. But we're here for the promo cards, and in this game we get Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, the Magnet Warriors. Not awful machine monsters stat-wise, yet not meta-viable. The next video game is on April 15th with Yu-Gi-Oh! Worldwide Edition, Stairway to the Destined Duel. Man, that sounds like a Japanese game for real. Continuing the line of Magnet Warriors, you would receive the combination of them all in Valkyrion. It's a powerful monster, if not useful due to its hard summoning requirements, though it's at least better than Gate Guardian in terms of effect and viability. Great, now you needed 2 games to summon one monster.
Money, please! Money.
However, the 2 other cards are real swingers. The first is Sinister Serpent, a weak monster that will always return to your hand in your standby phase if in the graveyard. Now you have a monster that works well with any hand discarding card like Magic Jammer, Tribute to the Doomed, Graceful Charity, or feature cards like Abyss Soldier. It could also downgrade the use of opponents' cards like Delinquent Duo or Drop Off. Serpent was definitely a pillar of old-school splashable cards. The third card is the coveted Harpie's Feather Duster, a heavy storm for your opponent's side only. The back row Raigeki to Dark Hole, you could say. Having such a powerful back row destruction was no joke when considering the high advantage and knowledge you could receive from it. One of the strongest cards in the game at this point. November 4th would be the release of not 1, not 3, but 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Video games. First of which was Sacred Cards, a game based around the Battle City arc with the cards Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, Riryoku, and the Gate Attack. Funny enough, Riryoku was on the limited list at one point in the OCG for Konami being scared of what it could potentially do. However, neither Riryoku nor the other 2 cards made any impact. Moth may be one of the worst monsters to meet its summoning condition in the game. The second game was the Falsebound Kingdom that had gameplay akin to Ogre Battle. If you bought this game, you'd receive Zoa, Metal Zoa, and Goblin Fan? Wait, it's not Metamorph? The 2 Zoas were fun and anime cards, with Metal being a fun throwback to a previous Metamorphosized game promo, Red Eyes Metal, with all the same drawbacks and all. It's a shame we never got more of these types of cards, like Metal Zero the Mant. That'd be awesome! Goblin Fan is a spicy card that isn't great due to other cards having better, similar functionality, like Light of Intervention. Still, I dig it like Booker T digs grocery stores. The last of the 2003 video game promos would be Power of Chaos, Yugi the Destiny on November 18th with Windstorm of Itaqua, Anti-Spell Fragrance, and 1,000 Knives. Knives would be Dark Magician support, and Itaqua would see meta play in speed duels as appreciated disruption, with Fragrance being the key card here. This continuous trap makes both players forced to set spells and can only activate them until their next turn, creating a card that's made to slow down spell-heavy decks to a crawl. Oddly enough, despite how great this card sounds like a Gogol Bordello album, it didn't see heavy meta play for quite some time because it affects both players, meaning the card owner is at a hindrance as well. It would see the occasional side deck spot against decks like Reasoning Gate or FTK decks and GOAT, or more notably as a great counter to Pendulum decks. There was also a limited collector's edition of this game in an awkwardly shaped case that featured 2 reprints in Dark Magician and Kuribo. To 2004, the Year of Chaos had another chunk of releases. The first release being World Championship 2004 on February 10th, where you can get your grubby little claws on Fairy King Truesdale, Kinetic Soldier, and Slate Warrior. Truesdale would have an interesting first release as its effect read that it had to be on your field for your plant monster's stat buff. Should have been called Plant King Truesdale or Kaiser Rio. This was only in the initial North American release, as everywhere else the card would need to be in defense mode to get its buff off, meaning Truesdale was a defensive monster only. Otherwise, with this release, you had a 1 tribute monster with 2,700 attack when it's all said and done, which is not bad. I can't find any resource saying this was a quickly fixed ruling or what the viability was, considering the next reprint in the TCG wouldn't be until 2008 in a champion pack. Not like plants were meta at this point anyways. Kinetic Soldier would be a solid side deck card against Warriors, seeing as it can out pretty much any opposition from Blade Knight to Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning. Not unlike Truesdale, Soldier would receive a change, except in his case it would be a name change, turning into CIPHER Soldier in an OTS pack in 2016. Lastly, there's Slate Warrior, a low-level, high-attack monster with a flip effect for attack gain and attack loss for the monster that destroys it. Slate's a card that saw more play in the OCG, as once again his TCG debut was a bit too late for his meta effectiveness. The following month, on March 23rd, was the Xbox game Dawn of Destiny. This would be notable for the first TCG release of an Egyptian god card. Yes, it was finally time for duels to pick up a non-playable Winged Dragon of... Slifer would have to wait to November as an anime-manga promo, while Obelisk wouldn't see the TCG until 2005 as a Shonen Jump bonus. So for a while, buying this video game was the only way to get the only available god card. This also introduced Widespread Ruin, which was like an alternate version of Sakuretsu armor, and would see play now and again, more so in historic formats from 2005 through 2007. It certainly made up for the last card, which was Dark Sage, which is a cool card from the anime, but not worth playing given its summoning requirements. At least the payoff of adding 1 spell from your deck to your hand is fairly solid. Another month passes once again on April 6th, and the second of the PC Yu-Gi-Oh games comes out, this time around Kaiba. It's Power of Chaos, Kaiba the Revenge, featuring obviously a Blue Eyes White Dragon, as well as Aqua Chorus and Seal of the Ancients, 2 cards that saw no play. Not next month, but on June 29th, the third and final of the PC trilogy was released, Joey the Passion. His included his trusty Red Eyes, plus Sebek's Blessing and Sword of Dragon Soul, 2 cards that wouldn't see play, similarly to Kaiba's promos. But if you're looking for fun anime cards, then released on the same day was Reshef of Destruction, and 3 more promos, Dark Magician Knight, Knight's Title, and Sage's Stone, all Dark Magician archetypal cards, and none of which were Reshef the Dark Being. Knight had a badass badass look that destroys one card when summoned, which was pretty liberal in where it could be summoned from, proving that Konami had learned from the Great Metal Monster debacle. Not great, and yet despite that, there's always room in my heart for awesome art, hence why I love Seiryu. With Sage's Stone, you could get out Dark Magician a little easier, which it did combo with Knight's Title and Knight respectively. Exactly 1 month from those two games was Capsule Monster Coliseum on PS2 with Abyss Soldier, Inferno Hammer, and Teva. Abyss would be the premier card out of the three, as it's a solid water monster with a bouncing effect, one that pairs nicely with, you guessed it, Sinister Serpent and a nice Chiante. Inferno Hammer sucks, and Teva is interesting. When it's Tribute Summon, your opponent can't declare an attack during their next turn. I mean, it doesn't do anything, but the idea is neat, like a potato. October 26th would be the last of the 2004 Yu-Gi-Oh games with Destiny Board Travelers. There are a lot of Destiny games, aren't there? Pick this game up and obtain MS the Infinity, DD Assailant, and Twin-Headed Beast. MS is the milk tank of Yu-Gi-Oh, which unfortunately doesn't result in much given there are simply better cards, and the two tributes it needs doesn't help, much like Harpie's pet dragon. Beast can attack twice, which is nice. However, the tribute summon for a 17k attacker isn't worth the effort. Assailant, on the other hand, is a decent warrior monster that would see play now and again in mid-2000s Yu-Gi-Oh! In warrior-centric decks. It's a weaker DD warrior lady, but not by attack, rather given its effect requirement and typing. It is still a better TCG draft than the plain DD warrior. At this point, if you haven't subbed yet, go ahead and do so. Don't be shy. We're in 2005 with only a couple Duel Monsters era video games left. First off, on Feb 15 is 7 Trials to Glory World Championship Tournament 2005. Silent Swordsman level 7, Kaiba Man, and Mind Control could be yours. Mind Control would be the Sinister Serpent here in regards to it being the staple in many decks to take control of an opponent's monster and doing fuck all with it except attack and or be tributed. Sounds like a one-turn removal to me. Whether it's to free a field or to snatch away a monster for Metamorphosis, Mind Control has utility in many decks and would only grow with the advent of the extra deck. Kaiba Man should have been added in Kaiba the Revenge. What's it doing here? Silent Swordsman is just a worse spell canceller. Congrats, level 7, you've just been cancelled. When we started with the Game Boy Color. We're ending here on the Nintendo DS with Nightmare Troubadour, released on August 30th. The 3 cards saw no meta play, but if you wanted Silent Magician's level 4 and level 8 and Magician Circle, then you can have him. Circle could be used as a way to get out Kaiku, which was still seeing play and then some. Despite its high potential like a Red Eyes, to summon many powerful spellcasters like Magical Marionette, Jowgen, or Silent Magician level 4, or later releases like Magician's Valkyria, Magician's Circle wouldn't see any play save for one Magic Spectre deck, so yeah. The following video games would feature GX era content, which is past the era I'm covering and the overall point I'm getting at. The video game promos, as we've just dissected, had a wide range of usefulness. Some promos contained strong cards, some blah cards, some awful cards, and some, while not bad, were released too late. Not every promo set could be Destined Duel, with most of them being more like capsule monsters, where there may be one solid card out of the 3. I'm not sure why Konami picked the cards they did. Perhaps they thought it didn't fit the theme of a core set, and since the TCG didn't get as many specialty packs as the OCG, video games were the only option to drip feed these sacred cards, at least as long as video games were available, which, I mean, nowadays it's all digital, so harder to see these releases. European Yu-Gi-Oh! Even got a different order of card releases, and in some cases completely different cards, as I'm sure I'll tackle EU Yugioh at some point soon, hence why I didn't mention until now. The prismatic rarity and uniqueness of the cards definitely left an imprint in me, as I'll never forget the look of an Acid Trap Pole or Fairy King Truesdale. They were at least easier to obtain than tournament pack cards, and for that I tip my Millennium hat. As you saw, some of these cards had real impact to the card game and would be for years to come. I'm looking at you, Disc Commander. This is not even considering you got an entire game with all these promos, and that should have probably been phrased the other way around.